start?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to know why story truth is truer sometimes than happening truth. That was a quote by Tim O'Brien from his book, The Things They Carried. It was a historical fiction book about Vietnam. And one of the things he emphasized a lot was that although some of these events may not be complete details from the actual war, that it was getting across a truth that was even truer than just those details. And so that kind of leads to the question, what is truth exactly? So by definition, it's the real facts about something, but that's in its nature just subjective on its own. So really, it's kind of like the collective agreement on reality. What we all come to a consensus is what's real, what is true. So we agree that we are America and there was a Revolutionary War. We all just agree on that. I mean, none of us were there, but we all have to say, okay, you know, the whole world agrees that that happened, so that's true. But going into fiction, you don't go in there saying, okay, do we all agree that this is true? Because the whole premise of a fiction book is that it's not true. And Susan Sontag, she's a writer, she said that the truth of fiction evokes humanity. So the truth of fiction isn't just based on some world that you've never experienced. Usually fiction is based on a world that we know. And so it may be a book about a teenage girl. Well, I mean, there are plenty of teenage girls out here, a lot of high schools, a lot of different things. And so fiction, the purpose of fiction is not to create a new reality, but the purpose of fiction is to evoke humanity or to play off of the 5 human truths. And according to the Starwood Hotels group, which has their Wellness and Spirit blog, the 5 human truths are: 1, we need to be understood. 2, we want to belong. 3, we long to feel special. 4, we crave more control over our lives. And 5, we dream of reaching our potential. And so human truth is something that we find in stories. And so, for example, in the House of the Spirits, if you go and research, as I did, the Chilean Revolution, they're like on a timeline, as Ms. Shrestha pointed out a lot, the things that happened in House of Spirits did not happen in that order. They didn't happen in this unknown place. There was an actual name, and but at the end of the day, an overview, you would get the same feeling, the general discontentment of the citizens from the rulers that are taking over in the coup and the dictatorship. And so the emotion of that, the human truth, the things you can relate to are still true in both cases. And so the fiction still has truth. So for some examples of human truths, we have Exhibit A. Twilight. Many people can say that Twilight is not a good book. Twilight was literally not the best, but Twilight still evokes certain human truths. So we long to feel special. A lot of teenage girls across America long to feel special. And what's more special than being some average girl with really pale skin and being the love interest of this perfect vampire figure? Nothing is more special, and so you can relate. You want to put yourself in her shoes. You want to find pieces of you in Bella that makes her good enough for Edward. You want to relate to her as a teenage girl, and so there's your success. Exhibit B. Harry Potter, we want to belong. So you have the beginning where Harry Potter has no real family, no real friends. He's kind of the odd one out. But then he goes to Hogwarts. He becomes this big hero. He's a celebrity. He saves the world. He does all of these things, and it kind of plays off of the human truth that we want to belong. So you read it and you say, well, if he can be a wizard, I mean, this isn't that bad. And you can find a human truth in that. You can find emotions to relate to. And so you can feel something out of that, even if it's based on magic and something that you can't relate to in that sense. And then lastly, taking it away from tween movies. If you're from APUSH, you may remember Rashid by Horatio Alger. Basically, he's the founding father of rags to riches stories, and that's we crave more control over our lives and we dream of reaching our potential. So rags to riches stories inspire you because you feel as if they can do it, I can do it. Once again, it's that human truth that then you can relate to on a different level than just facts. Something that speaks to you more than just reading about some guy who makes $1 million every year. Where do we find these human truths? We find them in stories, and stories don't necessarily have to be literature. History is a story. Everything can be a story, and when something is a story, it's more valuable. So Sontag, the writer, says that authors are moral agents, and so a book that talks about something, a problem, can get across a human truth that they want society to adapt to. So when you have things like Uncle Tom's Cabin or Huck Finn, then you have something kind of with the intention of saying, do you understand what I'm trying to make you feel, instead of saying, do you understand the information I'm trying to convey? It's a different thing. And a historian in one of the journals I read said that fiction is based on truth, so what needs to be true is true. The fact that there's a Mississippi River in Huck Finn, that is true. What needs to be is true, but they change certain things to manipulate the human truths for a certain purpose. So they may change emotions, they may change actions, they may change intentions, but the fact that you can see that this is something that is entirely possible, this is something that could happen, it makes you feel something that you can't get from just reading facts. And in history, personal anecdotes are very important, because reading a journal entry by a slave is much different than reading about slave treatment by a historian who's so far removed, who didn't actually experience it, who can write about it from a completely objective point of view. And even as we make history today, sometimes the personal anecdotes are more important. So with Instagram and Twitter and news, that can be more important than the journalists and things. So with in Ferguson, with the Mike Brown thing, when you have the continuous tweets starting with "I just saw someone die," it's something a little bit more pure than the news reporters who are trying to convey a certain message for their paper. You have his entire narrative on Twitter just coming from a first-person stance. And he's telling a story instead of trying to find every single fact and cram it into one thing. When you have a story with people that have been developed, with people that you can kind of imagine, when you know that he's there, he's just a teenager who's watching this happen, you kind of can feel for him more. And so a story can make something mean more than just a generalization. So when you develop these characters, for example, you can create attachment. So when Hassan is raped in Kite Runner, it means more than when we learn about Genghis Khan's rapes in history, because it's just on the paper. There's no real narrative, but Hassan has been developed as a character. We've made an attachment to him, and so it goes further than that. Everything means a little bit more. And so, just lastly, I would say that we need to redefine truth, because facts do not always equal truth. There's ways to get around facts, there's ways to manipulate facts, there are ways to present facts in a way that don't represent what we consider to be true. And we need to focus on empathy, the fact that you can relate to someone that you don't need to necessarily have done research for something to be true, that you can just feel something and that can be true. That's a human truth, to know that you can empathize with someone, because you can only, I don't know what that says. Okay, so a truth that is accepted, something that we've all come together and accepted, is not as strong as the truth that you feel by yourself, something that you can feel at home alone without any prompting. And so if we redefine truth, we can include that. So we're not just basing everything on reason, but we can let our emotions come into play sometimes as well.